The Emperor's Wall, the Praetorians, the boy in school that washed his hands exactly 37 times a day, and that could tell you the name of every interstate highway and how many bridges they have. The Imperial Fists are particular. The kind of people who deliver everything on time, within budget, and still hate themselves for not using the most efficient siege strategy. Their particularity does not always make for perfect Boy Scouts though, because the Sons of Dawn have almost certainly committed law crimes. If the Space Wolves are the Emperor's dogs, then the Imperial Fists are his housekeepers. They clean up every mess, follow almost every rule, and if they catch you tracking mud into the throne room, they'll quietly self-flagellate for not stopping you sooner. At least after they blast you into a cartoon pile of ash. They are the masters of fortification, siegecraft, and discipline. Every wall they build becomes a testament to their autism. They don't retreat, they don't rest, they never complain. In fact, they seem to enjoy the pain. But the Fist's greatest strength is also their greatest flaw. Their perfectionism strays into pathology. They are so devoted to doing things the right way that they sometimes forget what they're actually fighting for. They would rather die holding a meaningless wall than live having failed to defend it. Their entire ethos is that the goal must be achieved, no matter the cost, even if the cost is themselves, and that obsession has led to some truly questionable decisions. This is Law Crimes, the Imperial Fists. It's difficult to talk about the Imperial Fists without first talking about their gene father, Rogal Dorn. Dorn is cut from a similar cloth to the Ultramarines Primarch, Rabubu Guguman. Both are certainly on the spectrum, both have their entire lives planned out in an Excel spreadsheet, and both are pragmatic builders. Where they differ is motivation. Rabute is a map game player, always trying to expand his empire. Dorn is more of a tower defense spurg, the king of Kingdom Rush. But Guilliman builds to rule, Dorn builds to endure. His dream isn't of empire, it's of walls that never fall. And this is where his sons get their particular brand of neurosis. The Imperial Fists don't fight to win, they fight to prove that they can't lose. I'm looking at you, Iron Cage Incident. They're the kind of legion who, when asked to dig a trench, don't stop until they've accidentally built a cathedral. When told to build a cathedral, they'll make it indestructible. The Fist's motto could easily be, if it hurts, it's working. The Imperial Fists are notorious for their use of the Pain Glove, a device that lets them experience the most excruciating agony imaginable, purely to remind themselves that they are still unworthy. It's basically a spiritual kink device, the sacred gimp glove of suffering.
Come, big yellow man, and fist my gom jabbar.
This isn't just self-flagellation for the sake of it, it's institutionalized masochism.
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
Failure is punished. Success is punished slightly less. There's no joy in victory, only relief that the wall didn't fall this time. Even their gene seed reflects this obsessive, joyless mindset. Two of their Astartes implants, the Betches gland and the Susan membrane, simply don't function. The first would allow them to spit acid, which, to be fair, is a power that's been largely forgotten or ignored in modern law. The second would let them enter a healing coma, which seems like it would be kind of useful. All of this traces back to Dorn's relentless pursuit of efficiency during the Horus Heresy. While other legions were spending months cultivating new recruits, Dorn streamlined the process for the defense of Terra. He deemed those extra organs temporarily unnecessary and skipped a few steps, and in doing so, permanently compromised the Legion's ability to use them. And that's the Imperial Fists in a nutshell. A legion of perfectionists building fortresses to protect a crumbling Imperium. Each one convinced that if they work just a little bit harder, if they suffer just a little bit more, they might finally be worthy of the Emperor's respect. The 7th Legion and their Primarch are well-documented haters of one particular rival faction. The Iron Warriors of the 4th Legion and their Primarch, Pedo Turbo. Where the Fists are goal-oriented by any means, the Sons of Perturabo are the exact opposite. They are means-oriented. If the plan doesn't work, it's not because the plan is bad, it's because you didn't do the plan hard enough. It's a bit like how I play 40k. My only strategy is to table you, and if I don't table you by turn 4 at the latest, I don't win. The Fists and the Iron Warriors are basically mirror images of each other. Both are master builders, both are obsessed with siegecraft, and both think they're the only ones doing it properly. The only difference is philosophy. The Imperial Fists build fortresses to protect people. The Iron Warriors build fortresses so they can destroy other people's fortresses. I'm probably going to say fortress a lot in this video. So naturally, they hate each other. Deeply. They are ontologically opposed. The kind of hate that can only exist between two people who realize that they have the same job title and are convinced that the other one is getting paid more. If Dorn's Legion is addicted to punishment, then Perturabo's is addicted to resentment. Both are slaves to their own obsessions, and both know it. The Fists can't stop building walls, and the Iron Warriors can't stop tearing them down. It's an endless cycle of masochists fighting sadists, each convinced that they're the same one. So as soon as the 4th Legion turned traitor, I have to imagine that Dorn's hate boner grew just a few inches longer after being released from his chastity cage. And speaking of cages, that rivalry all comes to a head in one of the most infamous events in Imperial Fist history, the Siege of Sebastus Fall, the Iron Cage incident where Dorn promised to
dig Perturabo out of his hole and bring him back to Terra in an iron cage.
Kinky. After the Horus Heresy, Dorn was broken. The Emperor was gone, half his brothers were traitors, and everything he'd built had fallen into ruin. He wanted redemption, something that would prove he was still worthy of the Emperor's vision. Perturabo, ever the smug bastard, built a fortress called the Eternal Fortress. In the business, we call that a double dog dare. A sprawling, sadistic labyrinth of death traps designed specifically to humiliate Dorn. And because Dorn is Dorn, he looked at that obvious bait and said, yes, I will take this delicious bait, since my goal is to take the bait. What followed was less a battle and more of a slow-motion auto-defenestration. The Imperial Fists marched straight into a meat grinder, losing thousands of their best warriors in a siege that had minimal strategic value. They refused to retreat, even fighting hand-to-hand in the trenches of the Eternal Fortress until the blood literally began to pool at their boots. Dorn called it progress. In the end, Guilliman and his Ultramarines had to pull Dorn and his survivors to one side and be like, cool it with the self-flagellation, lads. It's getting a bit weird. And with their help, the Imperial Fists managed to rout the Iron Warriors for the most Pyrrhic of Pyrrhic victories. The Eternal Fortress wasn't just a fortress, it was the Fists' cock cage, a monument to their inability to let themselves feel satisfaction, release, or peace. The harder they fought, the tighter it closed. If you're still here, you're either an Imperial Fist or a masochist. Possibly both? Probably both. Hit like, drop your next video suggestions in the comments, and subscribe so that YouTube knows to keep pumping my numbers. If you want to go full penitent, the Patreon and the Discord are in the description. I've got minis to buy. Staying on the topic of those pesky Iron Warriors, let's harken back to a time when our lovely yellow fisters actually had Pedo Turdbag and his merry band of Iron Mongs on the ropes. The Battle of Farl. Despite a devastating surprise attack from the Iron Warriors, Alexis Pollux, captain of the Imperial Fists, had the wherewithal to keep his fleet battle-ready at all times. Thanks to that preparation, they were able to turn the tables on their assailants. The 4th Legion's fleet was getting absolutely manhandled, Perturabo's ships were breaking formation, the Fists had the upper hand, and it was all going suspiciously well. And then, they stopped. They quite literally seized defeat from the jaws of victory, abandoning their sacred "the goal comes first" mantra to rush back to Terra, all because of a warp storm hiccup that delayed Daddy Dorn's "get home now" phone call. To be fair, Dorn did recall them, but the tragedy here is this one moment of obedience, this single deviation from their usual never-stop mindset, cost them a chance to permanently cripple their mortal enemies and potentially change the outcome of the Horus Heresy. The Battle of Fall was one of the very few times the Imperial Fists had the Iron Warriors exactly where they wanted them, and they just couldn't finish the job. Even by Perturabo's estimations, the Fists could have killed him there and then, and in their hasty retreat, their fleet was devastated. You guys should be proud of me. I did a whole section on the Battle of Fall and didn't make a single Farless joke. When the dust settled after the Iron Cage, the Emperor was still a corpse. Dorn was still devastated, and the Imperial Fists were now in ruins. Guilliman arrived with his Book of Supreme Autistic Decree, the Codex Astartes in hand, ready to tell Dorn how to rebuild properly, which, well, he's a braver man than me. Dorn didn't take it well. He argued, he brooded, and when he finally submitted to Guilliman's superior autistic doctrinal reforms, it wasn't out of agreement, necessarily. It was more of an act of penance. The Iron Cage didn't just bleed the Seventh, it broke Dorn down enough that he could bow to Guilliman's demands. The breaking of the Legion was his final act of self-harm. But what have the Fists done in the aftermath that might be considered questionable? After the death of Rogal Dorn and the breaking of the Legion, his successors went their own separate ways, each chapter a fragment of the original Imperial Fists. The Codex Astartes was clear. Never again would any single commander hold that much power. The legions were gone, replaced by smaller, independent chapters. And for a while, the Sons of Dorn actually followed the rules. They defended their corners of the galaxy stoically. Then came the War of the Beast in M32, an orc war so colossal that it made Armageddon look like a pool noodle fight. Entire sectors were wiped out. The Imperium teetered on collapse. The Imperial Fist chapter, true to form, fought to the bitter end, and were annihilated almost to a man. But Dorn's legacy has a failsafe, the Last Wall Protocol. When the possibility of Terra being invaded becomes a probability, every successor chapter of the Fists are bound by gene-coded oaths to unite again under a single command, to reform the Legion, to become the Wall once more. And that's exactly what they did. The Black Templars, the Crimson Fists, the Excoriators, the Iron Champions, every surviving Son of Dorn answered the call. They gathered aboard Phalanx, their ancient fortress monastery, a golden relic of the Dark Age of technology, and reforged the 7th Legion in defiance of Guilliman's sacred Codex Astartes. It wasn't heresy exactly, but it wasn't obedience either. It was the ultimate act of Dauntism, breaking the rules in order to follow the principle. They would not allow the wall to fall, even if it meant tearing down the rules meant to keep it standing. It was also significantly more effective than the most recent time that the Dark Angels got the band back together. We don't talk about the Arcs of Omen unless it's to talk about how the Lion absolutely bodies Angron. And since we're talking about successor chapters, if the Imperial Fists are obsessed with duty, the Templars turned that duty of obsession into a lifelong vow of bloodthirst. Specifically, Xenos blood. Eternal crusades, vows of penance, purity seals on top of purity seals. They're basically weaponized white boys living their eternal white boy summer. Founded by Sigismund, whom many consider to be the greatest Astartes swordsman, though I'd still like to see him cross swords with Corswain, albeit that's probably just my bias talking. Sigismund disagreed with Dorn on one fairly significant point. The whole "is the Emperor a god" thing, where Dorn looked at a man who could literally appear in the dreams and visions of people across the galaxy and said, "Yeah, that's just my dad." Sigismund was like, that's literally God. So the Black Templars became defined by their extreme devotion to the Emperor, their unwavering belief in his divinity, and their absolute loyalty to his cause. They turned faith into fury, and fury into xenocide. The Templars have quite the reputation amongst the fanbase, and it's for good reason. The meme that there are no good guys in 40k and only the less bad guys gets kind of flipped on its head by the Black Templars. They took one look at Girly Man's gay little book, noticed the Crusade exemption clause, and decided to ball out for 10,000 years straight at Legion strength. The Crimson Fists are the stoic, level-headed younger brothers of the Imperial Fists. When Dorn split the Legion into chapters, he handed command of this one to the ever-competent Alexis Pollux, the same man who'd kept his cool at the Battle of Thal. He brought that same calm, efficient demeanor with him. The Crimson Fists represent the self-reflective side of the Legion, the instinct to turtle up, fortify, and protect everything they consider worthy. In their case, that meant giving up the nomadic fleet life and settling down. And since they were given dominion of an agri-world called Rin's World, well, how could they refuse? Unfortunately, Rin's World sat in a part of the galaxy absolutely crawling with orc empires. Then, in the single most Imperium moment imaginable, a friendly missile obliterated their own fortress monastery and politely invited the local orcs inside. So yes, the original Blueberries, the original poster boys of the setting, fuck you Ultramarines, the Crimson Fists definitely know how to dissect an orc. The Self-Harmers, the most literal possible interpretation of Dorn's teachings, they took the Pain Glove and turned it into an entire Space Marine chapter. Brutally efficient, they somehow managed to thrive right next to the Eye of Terror, which is basically like living in the 40k galaxy's version of a Birmingham council estate. Their philosophy on self-flagellation is quite unique. To them, it isn't a punishment, it's the reward. The punishment is being denied the right to carve themselves up in the name of Dorn. By donning Dorn's mantle, which means whipping themselves raw from the neck down, they believe they can achieve true unity among their battle brothers. The irony, of course, is that they completely missed Dorn's original point. Dorn taught, endure pain without damage. The excoriators heard, damage to prove endurance. Same sermon, very different interpretation. I guess that's theology. The Pain Glove wasn't meant to mutilate, it was meant to focus, a way to experience agony without damaging the body. Dorn wanted his sons in peak condition. Their pain was meant to be endured, not displayed. But the excoriators, being Dorn's children through and through, really decided to go all out with the pain thing. Each of these chapters is an exaggerated shard of the original Legion's psyche. Together they form a sort of tragic mosaic of Dorn's legacy. One obsessed with purity and loyalty, one with stoic endurance, and one with righteous self-punishment. So yeah, that's the Imperial Fists. Dorn cares not from where the stoic misery flows, as long as it flows. And if you don't agree with my take, tough shit, as I have already mentally depicted myself as the taller, prouder Gilliman, and you as the shorter, more desperate Dorn. If you enjoyed this little exercise in masochism, hit like, drop a comment with your own favourite Dornisms, and subscribe so the algorithm knows that you want to see more. And if you want to go above and beyond the Call of Duty, you can join my Patreon, where you can support the channel directly and help fund my descent into further Warhammer bullshittery. And if you want to just hang out, chat lore, or maybe suggest topics for upcoming videos, you can join the Discord. Links to both are in the description. TTFN.